Silele kunjini lo polista ngoma Ia ole Ia ole Silele kunjini lo.
Witchcraft has been a part of our society for a very long time. But the question that a lot of people have been asking is, does witchcraft exist? And if it does, why does it exist? Today, joining me on Cultural Expressions is Ubabum Timkul, and he will be unpacking and letting us understand better what witchcraft is all about and whether it exists or not. Sanbanan Baba. Linjan. Baba, we've got a burning question that a lot of people would want to know. What is witchcraft and does it exist?
I think before we can look at the question of does it exist, we have to define what we understand witchcraft to be. According to me, really, witchcraft is the practice of magical skills or supernatural powers.
Okay.
So the answer to that, do supernatural powers exist? Does witchcraft exist? It's simple, no, it doesn't exist.
Okay.
However, the belief in witchcraft exists, and the belief or the perception in it becomes a power in itself. So yes, witchcraft exists in the sense that people or society believe in witchcraft.
Okay. So to be able to have a debate, you're saying that the definition is witchcraft is based on supernatural powers. Could you please unpack that for us, for someone who doesn't quite understand what that entails?
It's difficult to define what supernatural powers is, because right from the beginning, when we are saying supernatural, we are saying there is no explanation how this comes about. It just happens.
Okay.
Now, witchcraft says there are some people who have such powers, who can control things like lightning and so on. So, and they do it through these powers which are beyond the understanding of a human being. And I'm saying, what exists is the belief in that. Okay. Maybe let me give you an example to illustrate the difficulties in what I'm talking about. Suppose we have 5 children who are in a room, and one of them contracts malaria. Now, for a scientific mind, it's very easy to explain. A mosquito came, it bit the one child, and the child had malaria. So there is an explanation. But however, for the mother of that person, if she believes in witchcraft, she will ask, why did that mosquito choose my child? There were 5 of them, and only my child contracted witchcraft. So it must be because of the witch. Somebody sent that mosquito. And therefore, if you are going to study that society, to look at how people think, you have to admit or to acknowledge that it's a power to reckon with.
Okay.
Because it has given an explanation to why the child is ill.
Okay, so let's assume that witchcraft does exist. Because based on your earlier answer, you're saying, no, it doesn't exist.
Yes, it doesn't.
So let's assume that it does. What are the characteristics of witchcraft that we see within our society? Because if I'm not mistaken, back in the day, people believed that they were witches. And they believed that they were witches because they had certain tools that they used, certain incarnations that they would say. Could you try and enlighten us on that?
It's a bit difficult for me because in the first place, I do not believe, I'm saying the witchcraft does not exist, but you are saying I should explain.
Let's just try and assume.
Yeah. Maybe what I can explain is, why does the belief continue to exist even though I'm saying it's baseless? Witchcraft actually does serve a purpose in society.
Okay.
Firstly, it fills in a knowledge gap.
Okay.
It is the nature of human beings to know what their surroundings, to understand their surroundings. Okay. So witchcraft provides that understanding. If I can go back to the example I've used, in that we are having a disease here. Where has it come from? So witchcraft has provided that explanation that the disease has come from someone who is a witch.
Okay.
And secondly, on explaining why it continues to exist, I think witchcraft gives comfort to somebody who has failed to do something.
Okay.
Let's give an example of a family in the rural areas. One family becomes very successful, they have a bumper harvest, they're doing well, their cattle are doing well, and another family is a total failure. They are always begging for this and that. Now, it is very painful to admit that I am a failure. So witchcraft provides an outlet in that you will say that successful family is because they are using witchcraft. It's because they've got what you call tigology, getting up in the morning, working in the fields. It's because their cattle are being looked after by these mysterious powers. And so it's not my fault that I'm a failure. It's just that I'm not using witchcraft. So in a way, I'm better off than the successful person because I'm a straightforward person. Those are witches, wizards. That's why they are successful. I've used the rural example, but really it can be used also in an urban setting or even in school. You may have some students who do well and some who are not doing well. The reason why some are doing well is because they've worked for it. They get up in the morning, they study, they revise their notes, they do everything. So they pass their examinations. Now those who have not done well, they will claim that it's witchcraft. They are passing because they are using these mysterious supernatural powers. I can go on and on really giving you examples in business, in sports. Success is attributed to witchcraft rather than hard work and standing back, analyzing things. What should I do about this?
Okay. If you can allow me to be a devil's advocate,
Sure.
using the example of the rural area. Let's say the environment was conducive for both families to be able to produce a bumper harvest, and they've both gone out to the fields to work on and tend to the cattle, to tend onto the earth to produce something, and there is no form of laziness, but somehow one family still gets a bumper harvest and the other doesn't. How do we then how do we explain that?
I think a rational mind should investigate why, in spite of them doing the same thing. It could be that the soils are not the same around your fields. It could be that a certain disease attacked the cattle of one peasant farmer, and it didn't attack the other because the other, they didn't mix with the cattle which have that disease. And so I think investigate such circumstances, you will come up with an answer. If you are just quick to say it's witchcraft, then you have lost the plot.
So in essence, what we're getting to is, in essence, there is always a scientific explanation. There's always a more rational explanation to the things that take place around us.
Yes, scientific and rational.
Okay.
Yeah, but going back to what I defined earlier on when I said if you have this perception that witchcraft exists, I concede that it's a force to be reckoned with. And so in my rationalizing, in my scientific approach, I will take into account the belief in witchcraft. I'll go back to the example of the woman who believes that my child, there's been witchcraft. When you are treating that child, you will have to have a show to convince her that you are also using a sangoma or what to cure the child, to convince her that my child will be cured. If you come to her just straight and say, there is no witchcraft, I'll just use the scientific method to cure the child, you may not succeed really. So you have to convince her using her own beliefs that yes, I have addressed the witch, I have sent in powers to neutralize that witch. Then you give the medicine which will cure the child. And so when she sees her child improving, she may attribute it to the fact that you have addressed the witch problem, when in fact you haven't.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if witchcraft doesn't exist, why then do we still have izangoma?
One of the functions of witchcraft is that they give certain people jobs.
Okay.
Yeah. And for a sangoma, if there is no witchcraft, then he will be jobless.
Okay.
Yeah. So it helps in that. However, I think we must be very careful when we talk about izangoma, because izangoma perform a number of different tasks, of which the belief in witchcraft is just one of them. Okay. Izangoma, they use a lot of herbs, they use a lot of medicines, which really, if we had the time or the ability, we can have a scientific explanation to how their medicines work. Maybe you take a simple one like intolwane. Intolwane, there is a rational way how it gets into your body, how it addresses the germs, the so on. It does cure you. So when we talk about izangoma or traditional healers, I think we must not just look at their relationship with witchcraft, because it's just one of the many things they do.
Silele kunjini lopulisa ngoma.
So Baba, how do we explain a situation whereby kulo muntu ogulayo and they go to the doctor and they do all the tests necessary to try and figure out what's wrong with this person, what disease they have or what ailment they're going through, and scientifically they cannot find anything wrong. All the tests come back negative, nothing is seen on the scans, but you can see that this person physically is ill. Is that not another way of saying maybe witchcraft does exist, or it's a supernatural issue taking place on that person?
Yeah, I think one mistake we make these days is to believe that science or rationality has discovered everything on earth.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you have that belief and suddenly science cannot explain something, obviously you will revert to it must be witchcraft. But in actual fact, our science has not discovered everything. So there are still some things, still some diseases which science is still grappling with, finding an explanation for it. So it's possible that all tests have been done, all known tests have been done, but we have not yet reached a stage where we can explain that particular disease. So we shouldn't just jump to say, because the hospitals or the doctors have failed to explain this, then it must be witchcraft. But I think right now in Zimbabwe, we are undergoing certain difficulties, economic difficulties. The truth is, we are not able to really pursue an illness because we don't have the resources. And so it gets to be cheaper to go to a traditional healer who will, from the beginning, say, I'll be able to cure this. Rather than the doctor will say, let's take him for a scanner, $300, let's take him for that. So we are not able to exhaust the scientific route right now. So that's the second thing.
Okay. So if say we were able to go through that scientific route, and given the example that I gave posing as a question, that said sick person, the relatives take them to a traditional healer, isangoma, or whatever would want to call them, and then they say, no, uloyiwe, uzibani bani. How do we then handle that? Does that not then indicate that perhaps there is some form of witchcraft taking place? Because the person who is sick may not in essence believe in witchcraft, but the people around. How do we then kubonakala ukuthi engxenye ehambe yobika ebadaleni and speak to the person who has lured them and things get better surprisingly or supernaturally, as they say?
It's very difficult to talk kind of in abstract. It will be easier if you are looking at a specific case. I would say, really, the example you are giving and the sangoma saying uloyiwe, it's a pity. How does he get to know that this person uloyiwe? For me, it's proof that really he is ignorant. He doesn't know what the disease is. And if you check it, this explanation of saying uloyi, it's always a relative or somebody close by. So, in a way, that's a dysfunction to society because you are causing individuals within society or within a family to fight against each other. I'm yet to hear of a Sangoma who will really admit to say, I'm totally at a loss. I don't know to explain. I can't explain what's really happening. And so they resort to saying, uloyi, or somebody has bewitched you. When in fact the truth is, they don't know what's happening.
Okay. Speaking on the negative things about Sangomas now insinuating like fights between relatives and friends, do you think that the belief of witchcraft within the society has a negative bearing scientifically in terms of mental illness, depression, because people don't think of it as an illness, but they look at it as someone has bewitched them?
I will say in the past, actually, it did not have as much negative impact as it has now.
Okay.
It's because we are now living in a very different world, and so it works out to have a negative impact. But in the total, I would say, feudal society, it wasn't really always just a negative force. It's also a force that legitimizes authority. It's a force which has its positives. But because of, I would say, the rapid changes which have taken place, that kind of society has been overtaken, and it's unfortunately it has become largely a negative force.
Okay. And yes, you might
Yeah,
continue.
I was going to say, if we're having the full benefits of saying a scientific and rational approach, then we will be able to reduce the belief in witchcraft. But the truth is, whilst we are saying yes, rationality, science, we don't have the resources to make full use of that approach.
Okay. So how do we then explain someone who believes in Christianity or religion, but still wants to practice some form of, as what you call it, the traditional medicine and whatnot? Can these two be intertwined? Or what do we say about such?
I think you'll have to look at the individual. Probably the explanation will be in the individual. There is this expression that give me a child up to 7 and I will give you the man. Okay. Meaning that up to the stage of 7 years, your mind is made up, the way you see the world, it's already decided. And so it's possible that you grow up in a society that believes in witchcraft up to the time you are 12 years old, and later you change and say, I've taken up science, I've taken up Christianity, which doesn't believe in witchcraft. But in fact, your original beliefs are still there. And when you come up with something that's not explained in the way you think you believe, you revert to your old beliefs. Okay. And therefore, it's not surprising because we carry different beliefs in an individual. And depending on how the pressure has come on us, we may pick up an explanation from the time you were 6 years old, which you think you have rejected, but still you are having it in you.
Okay. And what do we say about people who are so determined to say, I've seen this happen, the Ngozi Uzimo type of seeing, these supernatural seeings that we hear people talk about?
Let me just explain Uzimo or Ngozi. The way I understand it, it's kind of a curse in a family. Okay. And that within that family, you will be having unexplained misfortunes, deaths, and so on. But if you look at any family, there is no family that everything goes well all the time. The problem is now, if a family is said to be burdened with Uzim, whatever happens in that family is attributed to Uzim. Death is a natural thing. In every family there is death. And in Zimbabwean, I think you know the proverb, "Abulamango ongela something like that." Everywhere you go, there is death.
Yes.
So, if a family is said to be to be cursed with Uzim, every misfortune in that family will be explained in such a way, yet when in fact it's a natural thing. Yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So I'm trying to for us to find a way to help those who think that it does exist. Are we saying, should we lean on?
Yeah, the example I'm giving, think about it, really. Every family has misfortunes over a period of time. Now, if you believe that every misfortune of yours is attributed to uzim or to witchcraft, then you kind of believe that you are different from everyone else. You are not going to have sicknesses in your family. You are not going to have misfortunes in your family. That in itself is a wrong belief.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we must be aware that it's natural to be sick. It's natural, then we attend to it and take corrective measures.
So do we blame media for perpetuating all these beliefs into society, because it's more of hearsay?
The media plays a part, not really blaming. The media plays a part. If there is a sensational story, I remember some time ago there was a story in Maswingo that a goat has given birth to a human being. That made headlines because the public loves to buy such things. They will buy a paper which is a sensational story. However, if you follow that story through, that so-called goat, it went to the University of Zimbabwe, they examined it and they said, no, this is a natural fetus, it's a deformity which formed in the womb of the goat. It happens. It's not a human being. Now, that correction of the story, the media was not interested in, because it doesn't buy, the public does not buy such things. And so yes, the media contributes in that when the story is sensational, it's headlines. People talk about it. Now, when later on we discover that there is a rational explanation, suddenly it's no longer news, it's buried on page 33 and it's a small clip, nobody notices it. So yeah, the media contributes.
It contributes greatly.
Particularly the sensational media. And maybe they've got reason. The newspaper becomes very sellable. And I'll go on in the broader sense, in a capitalist state, really, you get your earnings by yourselves.
By yourselves.
Not necessarily by the truth.
Silele kunjini lo polistangoma.
So Baba, how do we explain people who get caught and then they say, yes, I'm a witch, Nyatarat?
Now, people who admit that they are witches, let us look at them this way. Supposing I'm a sangoma,
Okay.
and I tell the society, the rest, that you know you are a witch. Actually, there is, no matter what you say, no one will believe that you are not a witch. But then the sangoma gives you an outlet. He says, if you admit that you are a witch, I will cleanse you. So the only way you can be accepted back into society is if you confess that, yes, I do. And they make it easy for you by saying, look, it's not your fault. It's a spirit which entered you. You had nothing to do with it. But never mind, I'm here to help you. And so people, yes, will admit so that they are accepted back into society. And they do get accepted back, that you've been cleansed.
But what about those people who don't have the whole setup of Sangoma? I'm assuming that could be like in a rural setup most of the time, but we're in the urban sector. And then someone gets caught by maybe the neighbors, and they confess to, and there has been no Sangoma in the mix. How do we explain that?
The dichotomy between the rural area and the urban area is not that big, actually, because it's the same people who live in our urban area, in our rural areas. Their beliefs are still the same. So the person who is caught, one will have to look at that specific example. Because at times we do not seem to have an understanding of sleepwalking. Somebody may just be sleepwalking, not that you are a witch, and you are caught walking at night, almost naked. You are just sleepwalking. Now, for you to throw away the idea that you are a witch, you have to admit that, yes, I'm a witch, but if you can accept me back, I will stop my ways. So it's just a method, a way of getting back to society. You have to confess. You have to admit.
You have to admit.
You see, Isangoma is like, in a way, the constitutional court. It's the highest you can go.
Okay.
After he has declared that you are a witch, there is nothing you can do except through him.
Okay.
So the power he wields, really, it's awesome. To use a modern phrase.
It's awesome. So in terms of power, you've just mentioned power. So can we say that if witchcraft does exist, that it has this way of rendering power to people, it controls people?
Yes, certainly it controls people. And maybe in the olden days, it could have been a positive power in the sense that you do need control in society. You can't have somebody just doing your own thing. You warn people that there are witches out there, be careful. So yes, it's a form of control. And even if you look at the installation of a king, for the king to have authority, King Mzilikazi himself, he had to have his sangomas saying, we are giving you that power. So it legitimizes authority. So that's, I would say, a positive function. In that you are saying the authority you are having now is the right authority. Now even the Sangoma says so.
So it's safe to say that witchcraft, based on just this response, is a man-made belief system to give out control within a society.
Yeah, one of the things, yes, is to give out control. I would say it has many aspects. Yes, certainly one of the things, yes, is to give legitimate control of society. I think earlier on I did mention other uses in that if you are curing someone and you are using even a scientific method, it helps if you're saying, by the way, in addition to these pills I'm giving you, there is a supernatural power which is assisting you. It helps.
Okay, and speaking about power and medicine, traditional knowledge, can we say that it has it can fill in the gap where science cannot go?
Not necessarily fill in the gap. You see, if you look at traditional medicine, most of it is actually scientific. Okay. We may not have a scientific explanation to it, but it is scientific. Take umuti intolwane. If you take intolwane, that medicine will go in and address whatever is wrong in the body, whatever parts have been softened up and they have to harden up. So you can have a scientific explanation because it's there. It's just that the practitioners were not using it, or maybe out of ignorance or whatever. What I'm saying is, let us not separate traditional knowledge from scientific knowledge. Okay. Because traditional knowledge also has a lot of science in it.
Okay.
Maybe what we should do is to recognize the science in traditional knowledge, so that it grows.
Okay, Baba, in conclusion, how would you encourage someone to understand that witchcraft does not exist?
It's in many ways, it's in teaching people that it doesn't exist. And in illustrating, in showing that really is the belief, but at the same time acknowledging that that belief is a power to be reckoned with. And therefore it's not enough just to reject it and say it doesn't exist. You still have to address how you are going to deal with the perception that witchcraft exists, because the perception is the living force.
Okay, thank you so much, Baba. So what do you think? Do you think witchcraft exists, or it It doesn't. So please join in on the conversation and tell us what you think about it. And use the hashtags that you see on your screen right now. Igama lami nguLady Chawe uMadlodlo, and this is Cultural Expressions.
Intangible, purposeful,